Times, it's nerd times. It's time for nerds to get nerdy. It's nerd times. It's nerd times. Get out your nerd. Get out your nerd. Oh, there he is. There's your nerd. Hi, everybody. I'm your nerd. I'm Tom Lommel. I was gonna say bona fide geek. Aren't we all bona fide geeks? Is there not a if we put the fake geek thing to death finally? I don't think anybody can not claim some sort of geek identity anymore, right? Unless they like intentionally disavow it. So that's a whole cultural discussion that we're not going to get into today. Welcome, everyone. It is Disorganized Play. It's the recap show. Thank you so much, BSB Care, for reminding me to put the bloody recap up there. Although, at the end of Tuesday's stream, I just put it right up right off the bat. Just like, stop streaming, open recap. Done. So, hey, everybody. Thanks for joining me. I am going to talk a little bit about the game that we ran last night on Saving Throw Show, here on Saving Throw Show, the Iron Keep Chronicles, which is our D&D 5 game we're running in Sunless Citadel. For those of you who are new to the stream, I doubt many of you are, who are just filtering into the chat, but, you know, I gotta give that disclaimer. Our topics today, today's gonna be pretty freeform. I'm not gonna talk a ton about how the game went, mostly because I felt it went really well. And I want to tackle some of kind of the open-ended things that y'all out there would like to talk about. Since I haven't really fielded a lot of DM questions lately, it's kind of been catch as catch can. So if you have something that you would like addressed, please think of it. Don't put it in the chat right now. Save it for our Q&A segment, which is at the part of the schedule here I can't point. It's right there. See you guys? See, I'm rubbing it. I'm massaging it right now. Your Q&A. I'm getting it all loosened up, ready to go, so that when the time is right, it can burst out of the starting blocks and race across the internet into my brain, and I can address it for you. So that's that. But before then, we're going to talk about making it weird. We made it a little weird last night. I have some downloadable treats for you along those lines. We talked about making it weird on Tuesday, and last night we saw how that played out. Our next topic, we're going to talk about overpacking clues. This is important. It's something that I have struggled to address throughout my career as a DM, and I think it's a pitfall, it's a potential trap that you can fall into when you are creating any sort of handout for your players. So we'll talk about that. I'm going to take a quick tour of Reaper Bones. Mostly I want to showcase the Froggy Moth, but I've got my core set of Bones 3 here, and I'm going to take a little walk through the park on those things. I haven't opened the box yet, so this will be more of an unboxing reveal for me and for you, as opposed to just like look at these cool miniatures I got. Aren't they cool? Don't you wish you had them? Nope. We're gonna see what's in here. I don't remember what I ordered. I ordered, you know, that whole thing where they have so many add-ons in a campaign, and you go, okay, I'm gonna pledge at this level, and I'm going to add $29. Yep, those are all the things that I want. $29. And then the campaign closes, and a month later, or whatever it is, they go, all right, everybody, it's time to do your add-ons. And you go, what was I thinking I was getting? What was that extra $29 for? I want the invisible villagers. Do I want the undead? I have undead. I have a lot of undead. Do I want the undead lords? Well, the good news was I made sure I added the Froggy Moth. Do not regret it. You're going to see why in a few minutes. So that's going on. Amy Vorpal is in the room. Hello, Amy Vorpal. And then finally, we're going to do a Q&A, right? So those are our options. So, Amy, did you... I don't even know if you have the sound on. Have the sound on. Maybe she just tuned in to watch me drink my SodaStream water. This is not real soda. It's SodaStream water with flavoring. Mmm. Uh, you know, I think it's going to be okay. I don't think we're going to have too much spoilery stuff here in terms of the first portion of today's GM prep. Actually, I don't know that any of it today is going to be very spoilery. So that's fine. We can continue regardless of whether Amy has the whether she's listening in today on the recap show or not. So let's kick things off. Making it weird. Even though it's open-ended, I don't want to stream super long today. We'll try to stick it to an hour, so we'll see what we can do. Under promise, over deliver. Every time. All right. So, making it weird. There were some things. So last night, you know, so in the adventure as written, there's hints of this weird experimentation that's going on, and that's a theme that I have chosen to. Amy apparently stopped in to clarify just what she was up to last night, or clarify more specifically what she was not up to last night. So there's hints about this experimentation that's been going on, but it's not a very pervasive theme in the module as written, right? So it comes up that there's this plant experimentation thing going on, but it doesn't really come up till much later in the adventure as written. So I have decided to bring that theme forward and make it more widespread throughout the content of the adventure. And I think we had several elements last night that really came together to, you know, my goal was to make it weird, right? This could have been just a sort of a boring dungeon romp of, we go in this room, oh, it's mostly empty. We go in this room, it's mostly empty. Because the players had cleaned out most of the forces, it was going to be just a tour of, and normally there would be a goblin chief and his lackeys here, but you killed them, so it's just empty. So my stated goal, as we talked about on Tuesday, was to sit down and add elements that made this exploration interesting. To get back on the exploration and role-playing track of Dungeons and Dragons, get away from too much. We had a bunch of the combat. So that was my intent and purpose. So there were several elements that I deployed last night in order to make that exploration of the complex far more interesting for the players to learn more information, and also just to create sort of a tonal shift. And both of those things I felt were successful last night. So we certainly had the players learning more information. They saw that the goblins apparently are addicted to this apple cider stuff that they're drinking. They saw that that it was ravaging their community, that there's essentially a bunch of strung out goblins who were helpless because of their addiction to this drink. And we also had some other foreshadowing information going on with the trade log that got dropped, and also there was sort of this like momentary kind of dream vision prophecy thing that went on when they inhaled the fumes in the dragon haze chamber, right? So all of those things, I thought, combined really took our adventure in a different direction, or reinforced some themes that had been hinted at, and brought forth some information that that had maybe not been introduced, or hadn't even really had only been lightly touched on and not very well reinforced. I don't know if I'm talking in circles or not. Sometimes I get distracted. My dog's having he's having a little dream nap right now. He's having a little tail wagging woofs going on. So Luigi is with me today, which is fun. So I thought those things were successful. I thought it, in terms of information that got out into the party, that we would put on our plot radar, that would go, okay, now these things, now all of a sudden they either go from distant or dangling to they're now becoming approaching or immediate things that the players are going to encounter or are going to be aware of, right? So I thought we brought plot elements forward in the adventure, but I also thought, in terms of the tone of our game session and what was involved, that also took a dramatic turn from this big smash bash combat, which we had last week, to this week. Very much exploration. There wasn't a lot of, like, the PCs are under threat. It was a lot more explore, turn the knobs, twist the dials, try to talk to this NPC, try to get them what they want, try to get something from them, decipher a clue, that sort of thing, right? So we did have, a few moments where the two lawful good players don't want to just relentlessly murder the strung out, drugged out goblins, right? Okay. I mean, that was a moral dilemma that we anticipated, and when I felt like it got to the point that it was really roadblocking progress for the adventure, like, if you'll go back, you'll notice, okay, well, everybody give me a perception check. And that's when you can, that's where you will see me very definitively switch the encounter from, we're doing internal role-playing about how to deal with this situation, and really we've developed an argument, or we've gotten to a place in the argument where nothing is getting accomplished, to let's change the type of encounter that we're having. Let's go into a combat encounter. Because they do the perception check, Grayson hears the noise of something going on behind the door, then everybody gets drawn into that combat. And now the argument goes behind them, they come back to it, they deal with it, in a much more neat and orderly fashion. But in the meantime, we've advanced the plot a ton by them going into the chief's chambers and finding the various things that they found, etc. Right? So I would just advise you to, like, know your role as the DM, that you can not only step in and prompt them to come to a conclusion of an argument, but you can also interrupt the action of what's happening when everything has bogged down and it seems like you're in a stalemate. You as the DM can step in and change the circumstances of what's happening and pull them in a different direction without resolving that stalemate. And that gives them a chance to, like, okay, now it feels like we're doing something, we've accomplished something. Instead of that frustration building until it's just like players dig in and, like, kind of fight each other just for the sake of fighting each other, you can take them into another situation, have them fight this combat, discover these things, etc., 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 feel a sense of accomplishment. The frustration then drops, right? Oh, okay, all right. Let's go back to this. What do you want to do about these goblins? Oh, God, fine, kill them. I don't care. You're back in a different place. The stakes have been reset. You know more information. This is not relevant to you, etc., etc. Or somebody's going to give up or whatever, right? So that's a technique you can use. You have to be aware of making the party feel like, oh, well, now he's just throwing a combat counter at us because he's frustrated with us, or because he wants something to happen that's different than what we've decided to happen. So you have to be conscious that the players often pick up when you're doing that. When you're like, okay, everybody roll for initiative. Like, it can feel like you're punishing them. In this case, I felt like it was a nice segue, and also it wasn't just directly like, two goblins burst in with guns, right? The classic Raymond Chandler thing. It wasn't just, All right, you guys have sit around arguing. Footsteps come around the corner. Four goblins walk in and start hammering you with axes or whatever. That was not the case. It was more, you notice something else is happening that you need to pay attention to, and it happens to lead to combat. I knew it was going to lead to a fight, but there's a dramatic difference in presentation between, all right, you guys, while you guys are arguing, so that draws a connective, a causal relationship between you players are engaging in a behavior that I find boring or that people are frustrated with and nobody's interested anymore. Therefore, I'm going to punish you by introducing this fight that seems to come out of nowhere and you have no idea what it means. Whereas in this case, you heard something. There's a door that sounds like something's being smashed up behind it. Okay, I kick open the door. You see these goblins that are like smashing this barrel apart and they're looking for something. Okay. Well, now they have a situation to deal with, but it feels like, okay, well, the dungeon is alive in a way that's naturalistic, as opposed to this is a metagame thing that has happened that I've interjected into our play session because you guys suck. So, think about that. I want you to think about how you deploy that technique. So overall, I thought it was a very good session. I thought it achieved all of our goals in terms of changing the pace, changing the tone, offering up more variety in the play experience, advancing plot elements, letting them know, okay, there's a variety of narcotics that are being peddled to the goblins, and they seem to be addicted to it. It did predictably paint the goblins in somewhat of a sympathetic light. I think we can do things to counteract that if we choose to. But I think we everything about last night's session went according to plan. And unlike the previous week where everything went according to plan, at the end I was like, well, it felt a little one note. I felt like, other than really, there were two issues with last night's session. One was getting into that moral debate between the lawful good characters and the more chaotic characters. That's sort of an old, I feel like that's an old quintessential D&D debate that doesn't necessarily have a ton of interesting answers to it for me anymore. So I felt like it needed to be worked out. Like, you need to see where the characters are going to draw those lines and how hard they're going to fight for what they want to fight for. But, like Eric Reichert is a very smart and experienced player, and he knew like how to play his cards with his character. And same thing with Gaurav. So that's fine. So I cut it a little short, but I think it needed to happen. Was it particularly interesting for me? No, but that doesn't mean it's not something that needs to be glossed over or ignored. I introduced it. I knew it was going to be a dilemma. I wanted to see how it was going to play out. It played out about as long as we needed to see it play out, and then we changed the conversation, or we moved on to a different topic and then came back to it, right? I don't know that it was resolved, but I don't know that it needs to be resolved, and I don't know that it can be resolved with them both being lawful good. Eric did say something at the end of the night of like, well, why not, I thought about pursuing a fallen paladin kind of path. That would be interesting, but I need to talk to him more about that if he really wants to do that. That's a decision that I need him to greenlight rather than inflicting that upon him. The only other issue that we really had with the session was obviously Lizette was filling in brand new to the events, and there was a lot of having to confer. What would I know? Would I know this? What could I tell them about this? So it was a lot of coming to me to give her background information that her character would know, or to give her background information that her character would know, but she didn't personally witness at the play table. And there's not a lot you can do about that. I mean, it's a difficult situation to put her in, so that's really on me. Is I chose to make her somebody that was in the world already and would have information beyond what she had available on her character sheet. So that could have been, I don't think it was a stumbling block. I think it just went a little bit slower than, it changed the pace of the game in a way that, you know, it would be nice if she had been in on every session and just came to the game, or had been an avid, you know, avidly watching every single episode and knew exactly what was going on. That wasn't the case, and that didn't matter. It was just by virtue of the fact that Amy had to sit out last night, we had to bring in a guest, and we couldn't bring back Jordan, which would have been a nice bit of continuity, but he was out of town. So I thought she did a great job. I'd like to see, you know, more of her on the stream, and I'd especially like to give her the chance to get involved in the stream without having to just sort of be thrown into the frying pan of like, we're in the middle, and this is session 5 of our D&D game, and we have all of these relationships established, and your character has been interacting with all these people for the past 3 sessions. By the way, here's the sheet, go. So, all right. She said she enjoyed it. She had a fun time, and she felt like it was, you know, it's a little daunting to just sit down at a table of strangers and turn cameras on and try and be your most entertaining and funniest. But I said, you know, that's perfectly normal. Like that's you're always going to second guess. Like, am I bringing enough heat to this session? And also, you know, with other strong personalities at the table, it's your natural inclination to like, I'm not entirely sure what's going on, so I'm just kind of lay back a little bit. So I thought, you know, she made some great plays, and she's interested in coming back. I don't know that we'll have her. Like I said, this situation is not ideal for her to just drop her into the game. Although, you know, having her come back into one of these sessions, future sessions, will be a little bit easier. But I think, you know, it might be a more natural fit for her to come on to like RPG Exploration Society or something, where at least you're on the same level as everybody else in the game in terms of nobody has created a character, or we're all getting our characters for the first time. We're all playing this game for the first time. Let's see where it goes and let's have fun with it, as opposed to jumping into an established D&D game. So, yeah, so I think we'll see more of her. Just we don't have anything on the schedule right now, but I met her through Impro Theater and the Bearded Men, and I thought she was I ran an intro to D&D game for her, and I thought she was one of the fun players at the table. I mean, they're all fun players at the table, but that's how she got invited. Is I knew that I was putting a bit of a challenge to her with this particular situation, but I like to have 4 players at the table too. All right, that's enough of a recap. So one thing I want to talk about is overpacking clues. Before we get there, I have a lovely treat and treasure for all of you. So for those of you who tuned in last night, the party discovered a little something called the Goblin Trade Log. I had a lot of fun making this up. So, if you are so inclined to include this plot thread in your own personal game of Sunless Citadel, for anyone who is tuning in, where do I have this? Where's my Dropbox? Yeah, all right. So in the public saving throw Dropbox, where is it? Yep, right here. Copy link. Copy Dropbox link. I did it. I copied it. I'm going to drop it into the chat, everybody. Goblin Trade Log. Here's the PDF. You can have that one for free. If you're a Patreon backer, you will not only get this trade log, but you will get my amended notes for the Sunless Citadel that includes all of the weird description elements for each of the rooms that we explored last night. So that Hall of Dreamers thing, I can't remember if the blue like sludge pots were mentioned in there, but definitely the Hall of Dreamers, the goblins who were sitting around the fire with the chills, they were having withdrawal symptoms, the description of the the chief's chambers, etc. So essentially what it is it's the box text plus a bunch of additions to take out the existing like hive of goblin activity and replace it. It's the reskin with this drug addicted group of survivors who were left behind after the rest of the goblins were slaughtered or bugged out, right? That is in the Patreon folder under there's the Iron Keep folder, and inside there you'll find a new PDF. All my Sinless Citadel stuff starts with SC, so look under SC. So your Patreon backers can get that, but everybody else can get this thing. Now, this brings us to the topic that I want to address next, which is overpacking clues. Okay, so we have several things that the characters can infer from this trade log, right? They can't. There's not a lot here that's explicit, but there are many things that they can infer, and oftentimes, when you're the DM, you have sort of this overarching vision, right? You have your plot radar. You have this vision of all of the things that are involved in the campaign and all of the working pieces of the plot and how they interrelate. And you really want to like bring this forward and that forward and let them know about this guy and that relates to this thing, etc., etc., etc. And so often when I make a handout, whether it's a piece of correspondence from one NPC to another or whatever it is, you have that impulse of like, I need to pack a bunch of stuff in there. But that's countered by, I don't want to hand them everything that's going on. I don't want to just have this like slap them in the face type of guide to the plot that describes everything that's going on, and there's no mystery, there's nothing left to explore. They know what's happening and they just have to go put the MacGuffin in the what's-it-call-it to unlock the Hoojading and defeat the Boozwhacker. Right? So you don't want to give them the A plus B plus C set of guideposts, the formula. Here's how you solve the cleverly crafted adventure I've constructed. You don't want to do that. So on the one hand, you want to pack a bunch of information in there. On the other hand, my inclination anyhow, because I don't want to slap them in the face of stuff, is to either touch upon things or make them a little vague or reference them obliquely or whatever, right? Well, it's okay to have a few things that you can infer, things that aren't explicitly mentioned, that aren't explicitly defined. But if you have too many of them, then players start building this house of cards around assumptions that they're making when they're looking at this thing. And you, especially when you give them a handout, don't have a lot of control over where they go with those things, right? You can sometimes call for intelligence checks or maybe a religion check or a history check or something like that to go, well, you would know that that's not actually the way that works, or this person is not related, or it's weird if these two things, right? So you can kind of like steer them a little bit, but especially with a handout, they look at it and they start making the connections, and unless you have an NPC there to be your literal mouthpiece, you just sort of have to sit back and like when they start going in a weird direction, I'm not saying course correcting necessarily like a ton, but like you want them to draw the information that you have laid out in the way that you've laid it out, right? This isn't set up like it's over here. I didn't put this thing together. I didn't put this thing together to be a springboard for, well, I don't know, let's create some plot elements and figure out who the bad guy is. That's not the purpose of this document. The purpose of this document is to give them an idea of, specifically, it's to give them an idea that somebody, the main piece of information on this document is that somebody is collecting people. Somebody is taking slaves or victims or hostages or prisoners or whatever you want to call it, right? That's the main giveaway. There's some other entertaining things on here, but the main purpose of this thing is that there's apparently this character named Belloc who was given 2 kobolds and what appears to be 2 goblins. That's our big takeaway from this handout. That's the purpose of it, is this is designed to lead them to the conclusion or to indicate evidence of, really what's the difference? But it provides evidence that there is someone who is collecting slaves, prisoners, that the goblins are trafficking in beings with one particular person. Nobody else on this list is getting or has been gived people. Okay, so that's what's important. So if you overpack clues, it's very easy to do. You want to get a bunch of names out there. You want to get a bunch of information out there. But if they don't, if you keep it vague, then the players don't know either how to like knuckle on. Like, okay, is Fent somebody who's important? Should I know who Fent is? Who's this Baka person who's come up twice? That's okay. Well, what's going on there? The other thing that this trade log points out is that the goblins have dealt with somebody called Muckfooter. So obviously that's a spin on Muckfooter, and 100 shinies is 100 gold. Okay, seems like a lot of money. And so that's another thing, is like, oh, okay, they dealt with Gregory. It doesn't explicitly say what happened with Gregory, other than Gregory paid them 100 gold. And they didn't give him anything in return. Or at least they didn't write down whatever they gave him in return. So those are our 2 big clues that come out of this thing. If there were more clues, right? Because if we look at our plot radar, we have several other things that we want to foreshadow, that we need to introduce. One thing that I was thinking about is that the beginning of an adventure, or the beginning of your campaign, you're standing on the shore of a huge river, and your plot threads are little pilings that you drive down into the river. And at some point you want to cross to the other side, to the conclusion of the adventure, which means you have to build a road or a bridge that's connected across these pilings. But some of them it's okay to ignore. You can build a bridge that goes from the shore to one piling and ignore another one. But at some point you have to stop putting pilings in the water, and you have to start converging toward the other side of the shore. It's a metaphor that I just came up with off the top of my head for the most part. So it's not as complete, but you also maybe want to think of it as opening an umbrella, and at some point in order to close it, you need to stop creating new. That's not a good example either, but at some point you have to stop creating new places to go, and you have to start converging on the path that leads you to the other shore. So you can stand on one side of the river and go, oh, I need to get over there, but I don't know how I'm going to get over there. That's okay. I'm going to just drop, bam, 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 all these pilings, all of these things that could be the foundation for something cool. I'm going to drop those into the water here. And as the players play, they start connecting them, and they start building a bridge that goes from one to the other. When you start getting halfway across, at some point you have to stop dropping pilings and start getting them pointed toward the conclusion, toward the other shore. Is it the best metaphor? I don't know, but that's something I want you to think about, is that there is a time for fervent creation and for just throwing plot hooks out there and seeing what they bite on, and then there's a time to kind of like grab the reel and start leading them, reeling them in one direction or another, leading them from the end of that bridge down the walkway onto the dock, across the pier, up onto the shore, to the warm and inviting campfire which awaits them at the huge stone mansion that sits by the side of the bay. Oh, it's poetic today. So don't overpack your clues is what I'm getting at. You're tempted. It's tempting to put too much stuff in here, especially stuff that's vague. And we got two things in here that matter. There's some other stuff in here that's really just that's really more kind of character type of work. It brings some life and it paints some details in that maybe make the world a little more interesting, or certainly make the character of the Goblin Chief more interesting, since it's assumed that this trade log was assembled on his behalf. But those aren't plot relevant details. Those are just bits of character exploration, which is fine. Maybe I do need a fishing vacation, Fuckwad. You could be right about that. So once again, this is in the Dropbox for anybody. It was a fun moment. I really couldn't wait to hand this thing out last night. It was fun to watch them go through and figure out what it was and draw different conclusions from it. You know, for the longest time, I spent a lot of energy focused on, okay, well, where's the fight? Where's the fight, and then the climactic fight, and then the treasure? And how do I make this an interesting fight? And last night, it's not a brilliant lesson, but it's one that I really have struggled to learn. Last night, I had so much fun with those moments with role-playing the goblin who was strung out, you know, the weird goblin who just wanted Grinnick, and handing the players this handout and watching them puzzle over it and watching them like make connections between things that I had laid out on the page. It was very, very, those were far more rewarding than, you know, okay, you have killed the necromancer, congratulations. You know, I mean, those moments are also rewarding, but you know, it's so easy when you start out your career to just focus on what's the monster with the cool stats, what would be a great fight. He's got this sword, and so much of our artwork in Dungeons and Dragons depicts a scene of a great battle. It's so much of it is this in medias res kind of fighting with swords, clashing, that peak. And I get that that's a moment of visual drama, but it's not necessarily across the board the greatest moments of drama that can pop up in a game, in an RPG. Especially when you have the opportunity to have the characters in the party interact with NPCs who have different wants and needs and struggles and mannerisms. That birdsong thing that came out was perfect! Like, I don't mean to, like, high-five myself too much about this whole session last night. It was a great session and a lot of fun, but, like, that birdsong reveal that this guy whistles bird songs all the time, I thought that was terrific, right? I thought, you know, that paid off so much where, like, Havana was like, I told you it wasn't my character! Good. Good. She was happy, I was happy. It worked out perfectly. So, alright, that's overpacking our clues. Let's go over to show and tell time, and let's take a look at the Reaper Bones 3 core set. I want to tackle your questions, so I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this either. But, yeah, enjoy, download. There's two important clues in here about Muckfutter and about Belloc, and that's it. Keep it tight, guys. Keep it tight. All right. Let's go to show and tell time and see what we've got here on the table. Oh, look at that. Thank you, Mr. James V. Look how that dual camera setup works out. So I've got the Stone Skull expansion, and I've got the Bones 3 core set. I just got an email today saying that if you're a backer, that all the US ones have gone out except for like 12. I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of plastic inside. 150 plastic miniatures. So let's take a look. All right. Make way, make way. Not even sure how this opens. This goes in here. This goes in this flap? No. Let's just open the top. Opens from the top. Oh my. All right. I'm not unpacking all of these. Not on today's stream, anyhow. I will unpack all of them at some point. I like to group them. I like to use these sorts of things in particular for groups of creatures, right? So I need 30 hobgoblins. I want to use Reaper Bones for that sort of stuff. Yeah, so this is a prime example, right? You're looking here. These guys are all adventurers. No, they're not all adventurers. There's a few other things in there as well. Mostly adventurers in this bag. Okay. That's great. This bag also has adventurers, but this bag, take a look at this one. They also sent some weapon sprues so that you can mod. I don't know if I've ever modded a miniature. You know, I don't ever pretend to be the miniature expert. I like having them. I like painting them decently, but I'm not an expert at painting this stuff. Not by a long shot. This has a variety of monsters in it and a few invisible heroes and such. There's an Iron Maiden, there's some dungeon dressing stuff in here. This looks fun, but let's crack this open. I was a little bit surprised at how long this took to deliver. This was normally they've been pretty good about you order it and you get it 4 months later, and I felt like this one took a longer amount of time. I was waiting on it for a while. So I don't know. I think they had some production issues. I also was under the impression that their previous Kickstarters had given them the ability to ramp up U.S. manufacturing, and from what I could tell, in the Kickstarter update, a lot of the problems were related with things that were going on in China. So, but one of the things that I love about this package is, like, yes, here's what I want. I want a bunch of lizard men. Just give me a ton of lizard men. That's not a guy. Those are adventurers. Sort them over there. But here we got, I guess, 6, 8 more adventurers. 10, 12. Like, this is perfect, right? Oh, that's not a guy. That's not a guy. That's a guy. Right? So what have we got here? 1, 2, 3. That's probably, no, there's another one. I think that's, no, there we go. All right, so we've got 14 different lizard men with, you know, the different weapons and whatnot. These sorts of minis, this is the reason that I back Bones. Is they're great sculpts. The Bones material is durable, and when I want to field a fight with a dozen lizardmen, it's a super, should be 16. 4, 4. Yeah, that is 16. You're right. Very good. Your math is better than mine. So when I want to field an army of lizardmen, I have them available to me. Now, that's not to dismiss any of their other stuff. Like, I love their other minis. This is a great bugbear. It's really fun and evocative, and I could see painting that guy, making him a fun character in the game, etc. Some of the things, like kind of the cutesy death guy, that's not so much my jam. Sophie is not my jam. Sorry, guys. I'm not your audience. So, and these look like there's like several. I'm guessing these are hobgoblins. That's what those look like. There's only like 3 of them or something like that. It also included. I'm not exactly sure why. This is the bonanza for me, is how cheap these guys are. Love it. Throw it in a bag. You can give them a quick paint pretty easily. They don't have to be fancy. You know, if I want fancy pre-painted miniatures, I can get the Pathfinder miniatures. I can get the Wizards, WizKids miniatures. That's fine. They also included these undead. These are gray for whatever reason, which is interesting. I do love. God, let me find. I've got a whole bag of them. Hang on, you guys stay there. I'm gonna get the invisible characters. Those are fun too. Bloop. So this was an add-on pack that I bought. And I'll lay these out. These, I believe, are... These are invisible sculpts of existing characters, right? So it's just a translucent material. And what I love about this is I don't have to paint it either, right? Like, just use it as is. It makes a great... And whether... How many times have you like, oh, my guy's invisible. All right, well, I'll put a circle around him on the board or something like that. I think those are fun too. I like that sort of innovation with the material where, you know, maybe you put them in a different color, or you do this translucent thing. If you have the... Let me show you another one of those. Where did I put those? All right, here. From one of the previous KSs, I have this weird spirit thing. It's kind of hard to see that that's translucent green, right? It's like this. It's this interesting translucent green miniature. And then also, if you want to do an ice golem, or this is one of my favorites. These are water weirds, and I got these on sale somewhere. I don't remember where. I got 4 of them. I've just been dying to use them someplace. Those are super fun too. I love the alternate material. So the great thing I've seen online with these is you can put a little LED, like one of those little candle LED candle things. You can put it in there and it'll light up from the inside. So I love that piece of it, right? I do have a fondness for my old metal miniatures. I'm not going to lie about that. There's something about, you know, the weight, but, you know, when things break off on them, it drives me just up a tree. So there's one more miniature that I want to show you guys before I move on to Q&A. So start thinking about Q&A questions. I'm going to have to get a bag for these. I'll have to bag these. But and there's I love some of the sculpts in here. You know, I think one of the best ways to do character creation is to put 12 interesting Reaper sculpts on the table. And before anybody does anything, before you've talked about rolling dice, have them go through and go, I don't know who this is, but she's my character. That's all right. She's an Oni. She's got this huge war club. Maybe I could play her as like a Goliath type of character. You know, like all of a sudden your inspiration for who you're going to play is right there, right? It's all the character is brought to life. You could do the same thing if you got like the Pathfinder NPC cards, right? The little deck of NPC cards. You could do the same thing. Don't just put them on the table face up, no names, no classes or anything like that, and go, what's your character? Which one is yours? Who's you? And then you'll have, you know, you'll still have 6 or 8 left over. But I find miniatures to be really inspiring. And that also provides you with some motivation to then like do the extra work of actually painting them, right? So I love the sculptors that they have on board. Sandra Garrity is really my favorite. But I think it can be inspiring to just create a character. You know, I get the same thing as a DM. I'll be like, oh, I got to make a villain out of this guy. Last thing I want to show you is this monstrosity. I haven't opened it yet, but it should come together fairly quickly. This is the I don't know if you can read it on the package or not. This is the Froghemoth, and it is a monster. You know, so BSB Care says, next time you do a session 0 on Saving Throw Show, have you thought about combining the mini idea with how you did it on Iron Keep? Yeah, maybe I could do that. I think in terms of like how the Iron Keep character creation process went, everybody came in with a really strong idea of what they wanted to play. So I don't know that like we had a fun open-ended session that took the characters in a new direction, but everybody had a very strong sense of I want to be this. Now, what's interesting is it did still change, right? Amy wanted to play a warlock to begin with, and you can see that in the way that her character behaves, but then it went from warlock to bard to really she ended up playing a mystic, right? So all right, so let's build this thing. This thing is enormous, and I'm curious to see how it comes together in its final kind of iteration, right? So we've got this core piece, which clearly connects to, oh boy, clearly. No, not clearly. We might have to do some math on this one, you guys. It was like that. Okay. Well, before we put the head on the body, let's put the mouth together. Oh my God, this thing is gargantuan. I just love how huge it is. All right. Which end is up? This is the top. So leg goes in here. That's one leg. That's the other leg. Those go in the base like that. That's pretty good. And then just add tentacles, you guys. Just add tentacles. What I don't get, oh, what? What is going on here? Am I missing a piece? What am I missing? Did I do something wrong? There's these two. Did they connect side by side somehow? Wait a minute. Have they done something incredibly tricky here where they have? Oh my god, you guys. So for those of you who are struggling with your Reaper bones, these two pieces actually join together to form a single piece, which then inserts into here. I think a little super glue in this thing will all be amazing. And actually it feels very sturdy, so I think a little super glue and it's going to be a really solid piece. But there we go. So that's the big ugly. So just for scale, that's enormous, right? I mean, I have been a fan of the Froggy Moth for a long time. I just love the monster. I think it is mean, and I think it's actually a more intimidating monster than the Tarrasque. Seriously, like the Tarrasque is something legendary and mythic that you will probably never encounter, and if you do, it will probably just kill you, and that's anticlimactic. Okay, oh, I got killed by a Tarrasque. Well, join half of the rest of the the rampage, the 1,000-mile-long strip that he burned across the earth. But a Froggy Moth, it's got two things going for it. One is the element of surprise. It's got three things going for it. One, the element of surprise. Two, it's got all of these tentacles, all of these attacks, this enormous mouth. So yeah, it's bad that it can swallow you, but more importantly, three, it can drag you underwater and drown you while it's doing all of that stuff. So I got my bones, and I was sort of just looking through them and not paying a ton of attention to what I had, and I had like you saw, I hadn't even opened the box, but wow, I saw this one in the bag, and I'm like, something's gotta happen there. So I'm very happy with this Froggy Moth figure, and I don't remember how much the add-on was, but it was worth every penny, I guarantee you of that. I love it. Here's a Lizard Man for scale. It's enormous. All right, it's 3 o'clock. I will do, I will do up to half an hour of questions if you have questions. Let's get out of show and tell time. I do have some other things I need to address today, but that's our little walk through Reaper Bones. I'm going to look through some of the other stuff. I have an entire box of them that I need to sort and catalog and get all of my lizard men into a box. Get all my skeleton, like all of my undead need to go together. All of my bugbears and hobgoblins need to go together. Those sorts of things, that sort of organization needs to happen. All right, let's go back to Tales. So, if you have questions about, I guess about, you could ask about Ironkeep Chronicles if you're so inclined, or if you have problems with your game, then go ahead and shoot them at me. I see BSB Care has one on deck, but please put them into the chat, and I will address them to the best of my ability. BSB Care asks about Iron Keep Chronicles. Have you thought about subverting player expectations and having Gregory and Dell at the Sunless Citadel for good reasons, rather than their expectation that Gregory is evil? I will be honest with you, I have not thought about that. I think there is the potential for Dell to be... I mean, I think the expectation is that Gregory is evil and Dell is swept up in it. Now, we subverted that idea with the vision that Avril had in the Dragon Haze Hall last night, right? Where she had this vision of Gregory bent over, panting, sweating, carrying his pack, hiking up the hill, going, oh, this better be worth it. And then Dell is the one out front who's like, hurry up, we're going to be late. So we had the opportunity to kind of go one direction with it, which is that, oh, you know, Dell is she's just an innocent maid who didn't know what she was getting into, and she followed her dumb boyfriend into this horrible plan that went awry, and she's caught up into it, and now she needs to be rescued. Well, we're giving indications that that's not the case, that Dell's actually as fully complicit in it as the players understand Gregory to be, or assume that Gregory is. So, I think, if I'm looking at where this is going from here, our options really are, they are 100%, they're all in. They are, there's a much wider conspiracy that the players are going to discover that, you know, the mayor is in on it, and tax parents are in on it, and who knows how many other people are involved in this horrible, you know, alliance with Belloc, right? So there's that possibility. I think there's also room for it's a deal gone bad. They've been captured / taken advantage of, or experimented on, or otherwise enslaved by Belloc, and it's up to the party to rescue. You know, the whole we were trying to pull something off and we got in over our head, and thank God you were here to rescue us. So I think right now, looking at where the plot is playing out and that sort of thing, that's most likely where we're going to end up, is in one of those two scenarios. You could maybe do some sort of blend. I guess you could introduce some sort of third plot element or third level of complicating factor that makes Gregory and Dell more sympathetic. Because really that's the heart of your question, right? Is when we get to the end of this adventure, will Gregory and Dell be sympathetic characters, or will they end up being, for lack of a better term, villains or complicit co-conspirators? That's the ultimate. There's no way that they're not just sort of like happen to be there. That's always boring, and that undercuts the stakes, right? So they're not just drive-by, like happen to get swept up and aren't really involved in any meaningful way. We can't have that as an option. They can't just be innocent bystanders. So they either need to be sympathetic characters who have made a troubling mistake and were maybe captured, or they need to be complicit co-conspirators in some sort of grander evil scheme. I don't know that. I don't know. It's hard for me to think of a good reason, like a good as in lawful good reason, or neutral good reason, or for the greater good reason that they might be at the Sunless Citadel. But you could come up with something where the parents made some sort of deal and they can't fulfill it right now, and so it was up to Gregory and Dell to go off and fulfill it. That Belloc maybe is blackmailing them or otherwise demanding some sort of payment on a debt that happened in the past that could be like a sins of the youth type of scenario. I guess, let me answer this a different way. That situation is very much a Schrodinger's clue type of thing. They went deliberately, they got in deliberately, they were not captured or taken against their will. But the reasons are very undefined at this point. What exactly is going on is a huge, like, unobserved Schrodinger's clue. The players haven't touched it, so we don't know what it means. It's a lot to me like the birdsong prophecy, right? I threw that out there, and the first thing that came out of it, Havana's reaction was, I don't want to be the villain. Now my parents, not only are they outcast, but now I'm the villain of the story. Okay, well, we observe. So there's not only like, Schrodinger's clues don't exist on their own, right? They don't exist as, I've introduced some ambiguous plot element, and when the players interact with it, then we will define what it is and reveal its actual meaning, right? Schrodinger's clues also get interacted on by the things that the players say around that topic. So the birdsong prophecy went from being this thing that was ripe with potential for exploring whatever weird sort of nefarious deeds that Avril's parents may have gotten involved in, to it doesn't have anything to do with Avril's parents. And that decision was not informed by the characters interacting with that clue. It was informed by me as the DM observing the player reaction to what those possibilities might entail. And so I'm at the same point with Gregory and Dell, where if Amy's going to hate the fact, like really feel like imposed upon, that Dell is somehow involved in this or whatever, then I want to shape the story to kind of like change those expectations. Sometimes some things are like they can be an interesting plot twist and surprise, but especially when you're dealing with relationships that are so close to the characters, their parents, their sister, you know, whatever, their childhood best friend or whatever they've defined, then you have to pay some respect to how the player is going to react in your treading on what is ostensibly their piece of the fiction, their side of the campaign world. So that's my take on it. Is I haven't decided yet. I want to see as we get closer and kind of some hints come out about this, how the table reacts to these ideas. I think we could very easily make it a blend, right? Where Dell thought this would be a fun expedition to go off on and didn't really understand the implications, and Gregory and his family are dirty as all get out and deserve whatever sort of dire fate that the party wishes to arrange in the name of justice. So we can have a mixed outcome. It doesn't have to be both Gregory and Dell are complicit co-conspirators, or both Gregory and Dell were babes in the woods who got taken advantage of. We have enough room to mix those things if need be. While you guys, that's all I'm going to say about that particular topic. While you all are, if you are thinking of another question, I have a little something here that I got off of eBay that I'm planning to unveil in probably like the next 3 sessions or so. So I bought a music box. I only gave it like a third of a twist, and it's going a lot longer than I expected. But yeah, the Mummers van is going to make a comeback. The little toy that that Avril buried for talk. So I don't know when I'm going to. Clearly, I don't need to wind it up this much, but I don't know when this is going to come back, but it's definitely making a comeback. So that's a little preview for you all. All right. So if you have other questions, any other topics that you would like addressed, I'm happy to take your question, no matter how pedestrian or generic it may feel to you. We all start someplace. I started a long time ago, so don't be afraid to ask something that you're curious about. What is about your game or mine? I'm happy to answer it. I'll do about, if somebody comes up with something, I'll do another 15 minutes. But otherwise, we can move on to the schedule and wrap things up for the day. Yeah, just parenthetically, I feel like the game is going very well. I think I would just share a piece of advice with you that I think I've shared before, but that's like, get to the specifics. Like, don't be afraid to drop what you think is going on and go into the player's lap and let them deal with it. And then you can always invent the next twist or surprise that or mystery that you want them to grapple with. So as we were talking about before, you have that push me, pull me of, I have all of these pieces that I want you to know about all this brilliant stuff that I've thought about, but I don't want you to figure it out all right away. So I'm going to be very, veiled about what's actually happening and what's actually going on. I'm going to be vague and not tell you exactly, oh, he doesn't remember who it was, da, 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 da. Like, divine rule of improv is get the specifics out on the table, and then we can all accept them, build off of them, deal with them, and use them to help us step to the next piling in our river that we have to cross of the plot. Yeah, I feel like the foreshadowing is going well. I think in terms of prep and planning, now we need to take a look at the lower level of the Sunless Citadel. I did read through it the other day to make sure that, like, well, if we really get ahead of the game here and they somehow go right directly down there, here's what's going to have to happen. I'm guessing that we're looking at, I don't know, I would target that about 3 sessions to finish off Sunless Citadel. It could be 4. Some of that depends upon how dead set Avril is on going back to the Rat Warrens and dealing with the Fountain of Death. But this is, the whole thing about, the whole reason I was thinking about the bridge metaphor the other day, the pilings in the river, was now we're reaching that kind of halfway point, 2/3 of the way point of the adventure, where I've only got, if you look in the book, you're at encounter 42 of 55 or whatever. I've got 11 different areas detailed, etc. So I don't have room to grow this story a ton unless I look at those last 11 rooms or whatever it is and go, oh, okay, well, this could also interleave with the Iron Keep, the Forge of Fury, etc., 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 right? We could look at our plot radar and have a better idea, but, we're also almost at the point where if we're going to use Forge of Fury as our follow-up adventure, Now we need to kind of go through and like take a quick, like do a quick high level sketch of like, okay, these are the 5 areas in Forge of Fury. There's this, there's the Glitterhame, there's a thing, and there's the Forge itself. Do I want to somehow weave those elements together? If I'm going to have this reveal of this conspiracy in Oakhurst, there's got to be a session that deals with the implications of that. Where does that go? Can I tie that into Forge of Fury? So that's one of the reasons I almost need to look ahead to the whole next adventure, because if I've got 4 sessions, I don't want, next session I can probably safely not do anything if I want to bridge into Forge of Fury in a very like organically integrated way. But after next session, if I want to make this feel like a smooth, kind of seamless transition, I need to start laying the groundwork for, and then you find this Dwarven War Axe, which seems to be very finely made and has this one specific maker's rune stamped in the haft of it. Start getting those wheels turning. So that's where I'm at with sort of my campaign planning. Is I can either start narrowing options down, bring this to sort of its natural conclusion, and then breathe life into, and now we go to here. And the other thing that's weighing on my mind in terms of planning, just since we're talking high-level campaign type of stuff, 2 things. The Forge of Fury, even I think I would say more so than the Sunless Citadel, is a dungeon crawl. Explore these 14 rooms, conquer all of the inhabitants, discover the gate that leads to the next level, go down there, explore these 12 rooms, conquer all of the inhabitants. It really feels like a fight your way to the bottom type of design. And I need to read it closer to figure out whether that's actually true or that's just my impression from looking at it, right? But given what we've learned about us having a series of, like, for lack of a better term, showcase combats, where the combat is the main focus of the session, there's not anything else. Something that's weighing on my mind is I want to find a way that the players can have some sort of entree to RP, to interact with the different levels, to learn something, or maybe scam them, or trade with them, or have something that they want, do something that, get some sort of benefit from interacting with these people, gain some advantage or leverage over them, etc. So given the player makeup and the types of players that we have at the table, this is the material that I have now. If that's what I'm going to tackle next, I want to look for opportunities to tailor it to my group's player style and not just have it be a slog, a dungeon crawl type of thing. So, and BSB Care brings up the other thing that's weighing on my mind is the Ironkeep Chronicles. It was introduced in session 0. I deliberately deflected away from the location of the Iron Keep, and now I want to reintegrate that as an element into the campaign. They're going to be 3rd or 4th level by the time we're all done with this, and I think it's time for them to begin exploring the actual Iron Keep, or at least it needs to be a more prominent element in the campaign. The location needs to begin assuming the importance that I would like it to carry throughout the bulk of the campaign. And I don't say that as like, oh, I have a bunch of high-minded ideals about how the campaign is going to work in terms of the Iron Keep. I say that as, I think it's a cool name, I think it's a cool location, and I think it has a lot of potential. I don't know what that potential is. Iron Keep right now is an enormous Schrodinger's clue that the party has not really interacted with. But it carries so much potential, from an inspiration point of view, for me as a DM, that I want to make sure that I carve out room for that potential to really bloom and blossom and occupy an important space in the campaign. BSB Care points out, you could make it, the Forge of Fury, a vertical dungeon crawl where we put it in the Iron Keep and they get inside and they have to kind of get their way to the top. I've definitely looked at that. I think the Forge itself could very easily be located inside the Iron Keep, operating under the assumption, as BSB Care points out, that this is some sort of extra-dimensional space that is bigger than what it appears to be as just this floating chunk of rock, right? That would be more easily achieved if the Iron Keep, or if the Forge of Fury wasn't something where they go into a mountain and they go into all of these very kind of weird, irregular, follow this trail down into this chamber, and there's this waterfall and mushroom field, and I'm just naming things that I don't know whether they're actually in there or not, but there is a very large sort of Underdark exploration aspect to it for like 4 levels, and then you finally get to the, like, here's where the dwarves have carved out their home and actually built a structured situation, right? So that's I don't feel like that fits in with the idea of the Iron Keep. I think there's room for the Iron Keep to have sort of a open, natural, free-form wandering kind of area that's not structured, but I think that can't be where we introduce the thing, right? I think it's a better reveal to have it be a series of complexes. This wing is very structured, and there's rooms, and there's a hallway, and there's a foyer, and there's a place with a fireplace, and there's a grand ballroom, like that sort of like structured mansion type of feel to begin with. And then as it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, it starts to get weirder and weirder and weirder. Here's this guy created his wing of the Iron Keep to be this verdant forest that has a few features attached to it, but for most part is this like wandering landscape of 6 square miles or whatever it is, and to the point where we start when it gets kind of like, oh, okay, well now we don't just have like, this guy built all of his rooms out of iron, and this guy was really into marble, and this guy was really into gold, and then this guy built this park that is all completely outdoors, until we get to, this is a completely different demi-plane, or has the feel of a very bizarre extra-dimensional space that maybe touches the astral and the ethereal and the elemental and the positive and negative material planes, that sort of thing. James V says, couldn't the Iron Keep be the focal nexus similar to the bar that has the special, similar to the bar in the Yawning Portal? Is that what you're talking about? But at the end of each adventure, they find the key to sort out the Tower of the Keep to take control of it. So the key resets the tower to be the regular tower, and when they get the key, the normal extra-dimensional space of the tower is available. Yeah, so I have put some thoughts into how that extra-dimensional space works, and what I'm going to, well, the way I'm inclined to go with this is that each of the owners had a different talisman, for lack of a better term, right? So they each had their own personal talisman, which served in essence as their key, but it wasn't actually a physical, or it wasn't necessarily confined to being just in the shape of a key, right? So one of the guys, he may have had this special sword that was a ceremonial sword, not sharp at all. In fact, maybe the blade was just all one piece of mahogany wood. It doesn't even have a sharp edge to it, but it's inlaid with gold and has this end cap and this fancy leather pommel and stuff like that. But just by attuning to that sword, or carrying that sword, actually probably attuning to it, he is the de facto owner or lord of that wing of the Iron Keep. So it does allow you to kind of send the party on kind of a dungeon quest, right? So that they can go, oh, now you've learned something about I'm trying to think of one of the lords that Arun Mox or whatever his name is. You've learned something about Arun Mox, and his particular talisman was this leather-bound book called the Codex of the Keep or something like that. So they could go and look for that thing and find it, and then open up another wing, and that would open up more adventure for them. And then also, as they get those owner's talismans, such a weird term, it sounds weird, but as they get those things, then they could unlock powers of the keep. So maybe they could move it, or maybe they could make it float higher or lower, or maybe they could turn on a fountain, or something like that, right? Something that makes the place more habitable, more livable. I would like there to be some sort of element of like, this part of it is run down and needs to be fixed up, and that allows them the opportunity to kind of remake this area however they see fit. And to give each of them the opportunity to have their own quarters that they can stamp with their own style. All right. So, thank you so much for everyone, you know, joining in today and participating in our chat. I thought it was a great session last night, and I enjoyed our talk today. I thought it's nice to be able to tackle a few things other than just like, here's what's going on in the game. I can't stop fidgeting with this Froggermoth. It's enormous, and I love everything. The only way it could be better if it could actually belch like 1,000 Froggermoth tadpole spawns out of its mouth. But I don't think I want that in my house. Alright, so let's take a look at what's left on the calendar for today. Tonight is Edge of the Empire, a Star Wars game, Never Tell Me the Odds, with America's favorite Dungeon Master, Mr. David Crennan. So you are heartily encouraged to tune in for that, if, of course, you are not tuning in for the 100th episode of Critical Role, which so many people do. But hey, if D&D is not your thing, you want to check out Star Wars, David runs an entertaining game, so check that out. Friday night is the final episode of Wild Cards. We'll be going on a short break there with Wild Cards with Mr. Jordan Caves Callerman DMing that as a standalone episode, its own episode. An epilogue, if you will. The Wedding of the Century. I'm told the Wedding of the Century is taking place tomorrow night, so tune in for that. And on Saturday at 12:30, it is Phoenix Dawn Command. Check that out. That is also the season finale with your gracious and lovely host, Mac Beauvais. So please check that out. If you can't check it out live, you have all day Sunday to catch up on the YouTubes. Two other things I just want to make you aware of. In 2 weeks. All right, so Black Bag is coming back in on Fridays, and Masks is coming in for Phoenix Dawn Command. Thank you, BSB Care, for that update. In 2 weeks, woo, we will be hosting our 24-hour live stream for charity. We're raising money for the Alzheimer's Association. It is the main charity that we support. We do an annual event to raise money to help combat Alzheimer's. It's a topic that's very near and dear to my heart. I believe what I have decided to run, since chat did not unlock the opportunity to decide for me, which just sort of puts me in a pickle because now I've had to decide on myself. But I believe what I've decided to run, and you're hearing this here before Dom even hears about it, I'm going to run the, and I don't feel like I have a reason not to, the really random Marvel Superheroes game. I think that'll be fun. I'll be using the original MSHAG phase rip system, and we will be going hard on the Ultimate Powers book. I think it's going to be the type of situation where everybody starts as some sort of character. We're probably going to destroy Las Vegas. Everybody starts as somebody on the Las Vegas Strip who doesn't have any powers, and then their powers like bump, 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 boost, 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 boost up as we play the game and as donations come in. They'll be not necessarily getting greater in power, but gaining different powers. So we're going to essentially Frankenstein like the weirdest, most nonsensical characters that we can over the course of the game. Brian Patterson is coming in where I'm going to run that game. He's going to play, and then he will be running a session of Carthoon that I will be playing in Saturday afternoon. But the whole thing kicks off with a special session of Black Bag on Friday night, the 23rd, going for 24 hours into 8 o'clock on Saturday the 24th. So please tune in for that. The week before then, on June 17th, if I have that date right, I talked about it a lot last night, I, along with Mr. Gaurav Galati, along with Mr. Dom Zook, am going to be joining Scott Woodard for a signing, the author and game designer Scott Woodard, who's done stuff with Pinnacle, and he's done Savage World stuff, and I think he did, if I'm correct, he did the new Flash Gordon RPG. He will be doing a book signing of his new release from Green Ronin called Cinema and Sorcery. It's a series of essays about famous fantasy films throughout cinematic history. So we're all going to be at the Barnes & Noble in Burbank on the 17th. And I will be running a very brief game of some sort of Dungeons & Dragons inspired madness there. And maybe we'll pull somebody up out of the crowd, or maybe we'll just sort of belittle Gaurav and Dom and try and make Scott the hero of the entire event. So you can also join us for that. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I have to promote, but oh, yes, I have one other thing to promote. So if you have enjoyed Disorganized Play, but you wish that it wasn't just Tom talking the entire time, tomorrow night on DM's Deep Dive, I will be joining or host Mike Shea and talking about improvisation specifically in Dungeons & Dragons, but basically in RPGs in general. We're going to cover a variety of topics, from sort of beginner stuff of what are 3 things that I could do to improvise better and quicker and more naturally, all the way to are there resources I can use, what are some advanced sort of takes or techniques for D&D, for improvising, etc. So that whole conversation will be tomorrow night at 8 Eastern. It's going to be early, so it'll be 5 Pacific. It'll be on the DM's Deep Dive. Follow me on my Twitter, and I have already tweeted about it a little bit, but I will tweet about it more. So that will also be on Twitch tomorrow night. Almost 24 short hours, 26 and a half short hours from now. So I better do some preparation. But those are all things where I'm involved. You can catch me. You can catch up with Saving Throw. You can, of course, go to the calendar and find out everything that's going on with Saving Throw anytime you like here. I want to thank all of you for your time and attention. I want to thank BSB Care and James V for their help here in the room, as well as the illustrious Farquad for all of his moderating time and talent. We really appreciate you guys' passion and attention and support, and all of our viewers. So if you are not a Patreon backer, Patreon, I like to say Patreon. If you're not a backer, it's never too late to join. You can jump in, help us support. We have some exciting new initiatives, which my understanding is we have not announced, but I will say look for big changes in the next month that require us to have a more reliable grasp, or it not require us, but it would be helpful for us to have a more reliable grasp on our budget. So without saying anything else, thank you to everyone who donates. But if you can't donate for whatever reason, I completely understand. I have been broke. It is not fun. So if you're just a casual fan who's trying to soak in as much advice and information and fun and interest and passion as you can without having to spend a lot of money, I understand that. The best thing you can do for us, tell your friends, tell your gamer buddies, tell the various people on social media that you encounter what you like about Saving Throw Show and what shows you tune in and what you watch. So that's the least expensive and best way that you can support us, if that's the avenue you choose. So with that in mind, until next time, let's dungeon! 113 and a half for 113 and a half. So yeah, that's a callback, because I remembered last week on on Tuesday. Well, this past Tuesday, I said it was 113. And then I was like, uh-oh, I better remember it because that's a really big number. And I remembered, you guys. Okay, I'm turning it off.